Elliot had always been different. From a young age, there was a coldness in his eyes, a quiet madness that no one could explain. His mother used to say he was a loner, always lost in his thoughts, always staring out the window with a distant look. The doctors called it something else, antisocial personality disorder. But Elliot didn't care for labels. He didn't care for much really. Except her. Hannah. She had a way of smiling that made the world seem a little less heavy, a laugh that made the air feel lighter. She was beautiful, warm, and she made Elliot feel things he couldn't understand. She didn't know how dangerous he was. She didn't know how much of a monster lived behind his hollow eyes. They met in high school during a group project. Hannah was everything Elliot wasn't: popular, friendly, full of life. And though they were polar opposites, she saw something in him that others didn't. A quiet understanding. She even started talking to him after school, asking about his interests. At first, Elliot was puzzled. Why her? Why would someone like her want to spend time with someone like him? But slowly, a strange attachment grew within him. He didn't need friends, he needed Hannah. He couldn't bear the thought of losing her. His obsession with her became an all-consuming thing. He watched her from afar, memorized her routines, the way she laughed, how she always twirled her hair when she was nervous. He convinced himself she was his, that they were meant to be. Then one night, she told him something that shattered him. "I'm seeing someone," she said softly as they sat on the park bench under the pale moonlight. His world went silent. He had been so sure, so certain that they were destined for each other. His heart, which had always been a cold, dead thing, cracked. The sharp pain of rejection twisted in his chest. "Who?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Jason," she said, her smile innocent, unaware of the dark storm brewing inside him. "He's nice, Elliot. I think you'd like him." Jason. The name echoed in his mind like a distant drumbeat. Elliot had never met Jason, but in that moment it didn't matter. All he could see was the way she spoke his name, the way her eyes lit up. His hands trembled. His mind raced. He couldn't let her go. She belonged to him. That night, the darkness within him fully emerged. As they walked through the quiet park, Elliot led her down a path less traveled. He spoke to her softly, his words slithering through her defenses, masking the rage boiling in his chest. When they reached the shadows, he turned to face her, his hands clenched at his sides. "You don't get it, do you, Hannah? You belong to me." She laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. But the twisted smile on his face told her otherwise. Before she could react, his hands were around her throat, squeezing tight. Panic flooded her eyes, but there was nowhere to run. His grip tightened, cutting off her breath. She struggled, but he didn't stop. He was too far gone. When it was over, Elliot stood over her lifeless body, his breathing shallow and uneven. He looked at her once more, the coldness returning to his eyes. She had been his after all. And now, she always would be.